Good evening, everyone. If I could ask you to take your seats, we'll call our meeting to order of the Central Middle School Building Committee, specifically the Community Engagement Forum. With that, if you will, please stand with me and let's do the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, which is on your left. Thank you, everyone. My name is Tony Turner, and I'm the chairman of the Central Middle School Building Committee. And first of all, I want to say that the committee, on behalf of the committee, we are absolutely delighted that you're here this evening, whether you're online or here in the middle school auditorium. We want to emphasize that we really appreciate you coming out to learn of all the progress that we've made thus far on the project, which has been quite substantial. At the same time, we still have a lot of work to do, which means we'll be coming back to you either later in April or early May with a second community outreach meeting like we're having here this evening. Emphasizing that tonight is for you. Hopefully on the way in, you received a copy of a QR code. And one of the things we're doing this evening is leveraging technology to hear from you as to the questions you might have about the project. So one way you can do that with your smartphone is by doing a photo of the QR code. It will bring up the question and answer capability. And as you send in your questions throughout the presentation tonight, Kemp Morehart on the end of the table will be monitoring your questions and gathering them as we go. In addition to that, where is Claire? Claire Kilgallen, our vice chair, is in the back of the room with index cards and golf pencils. So if you do not have a smartphone, that is an alternative way to submit your questions. And we're going to do our very best to answer as many questions as we can. However, if we can't answer your questions, we will be doing so in writing and posting them in a document on the Greenwich Public Schools website. So does anyone need an index card or a golf pencil now to submit questions? If you could raise your hand, our Vanna White of the building committee will move around and hand out the index cards. Anyone at all? Okay, we have a couple over there. Thank you. Next, I want to, at least those that are here, I want to be sure to introduce a very, very special group of people. And those people are my colleagues on the building committee. We typically meet every week. Sometimes we meet as many as 4 times a week, depending on the type of business that needs to be done. If you're here tonight as a Central Middle School Building Committee member, if you would stand and let's give these guys guys and gals a round of applause to thank them for their work so far. You can also corner them for questions afterwards. That's really why we asked them to stand. Let me talk next about the agenda. Amy, could you just angle that maybe? We're going to be very brief. We're going to talk about the professional teams that we've hired, the consultants that are in place today, the architectural design team. We're going to spend most of our evening with them, going over the massing plan and so forth. You'll see all that in just a moment, and then Q&A. As I said earlier, we're going to do our best to answer as many questions as possible because this night is for you. And then we have a couple of ideas as to how you can stay informed regarding our work going forward. Thank you. The QR code we've already talked about. We really would like to get your questions via that mechanism, and we can go to the next slide, which I'm delighted to introduce the consultants that we've hired for this particular project. First of all, to my immediate left is Chris Cycley. Chris is a principal in the firm of Construction Solutions Group. We've hired them to be our owner's representative in this particular project. To Chris's left, Tim Kleps. Tim is the project director from Turner Construction. No relation to the chair. And a new face that no one has seen before, and that's Tom Healy, the principal of Central Middle School. Tom, delighted to have you here. And I will say, Tom has been quite instrumental in helping us get to where we are today in our system. I'm going to have the SLAM team, the SLAM collaborative team of architects. All four individuals are sitting to my left, and I'm going to ask Amy Samuelson, the project director, sitting to my immediate right, to introduce her team, please.
Thank you, Tony. So as Tony mentioned, I'm the project manager for this project, and I'll be ushering the project through from this very early stage all the way through the end of construction, working with Tim and his group. On the far right, Kemp Morehart was introduced. He's monitoring our questions and answers. He's a principal at SLAM and principal in charge of this project. Next is Jim Hoagland. Jim is an architect at SLAM and the lead designer for this project on the building. And immediately to my right is Henry Withers. Henry is a landscape architect at SLAM, leading the design of the site.
Thank you very much, Amy. The last slide that I'm going to talk about and then turn the program over to Amy and her colleagues at SLAM is the draft project timeline. And what I'd like to do is to zero in on the middle of the slide and talk a little about construction. You can see that the target construction date is to begin in June of 2024. And run for approximately 20 to 21 months, ending in February of 26. So if you're here this evening as a parent, as a neighbor, and so forth, we want to at least communicate to you now based on what we know. And we don't know everything. This could change, which is why we've emphasized that the timing is for illustrative purposes only, but these are the target dates. Occupancy being in March of 2026 over the summer, so that no later than the beginning of the school year in the fall of 2026, the new school building will be in full use. So again, this is a very high level, but we want to begin to communicate timeline to the CMS community. So Amy, it's all yours from here.
Thank you. So as a part of our agenda for the design team, I'll be reviewing the project goals, which were developed with many stakeholders, many community members and teachers, faculty and administration, and the building committee. We also, I'll just do a quick overview of the program verification. That's still an ongoing process for our design. And then Jim and Henry will review the site planning and the building massing as far as we've gotten so far. And then we'll talk about what next steps are and what you can expect to see at the next community meeting, as Tony mentioned, at the end of April or beginning of May. So we gathered stakeholders during a 5-hour or 5 1-hour sessions visioning session in January, and we were able to collect 3 important features that this building should deliver from each of them, and we consolidated those. We saw what multiple opinions were coming up and what's important to the community and the stakeholders of Central Middle School. And we were able to consolidate them into 3 overarching goals for the project. The first you see here, purposeful and resilient design. And that is to create a safe and secure facility for Greenwich that supports the current educational program, yet is adaptable, flexible and resilient to evolve as the challenges of curriculum, technologies, and pedagogies advance. Site design and building form to celebrate this unique location in Greenwich while respecting its neighbors. So I think what we're looking for there is some timeless design. The second goal that we were able to generate from multiple responses is fostering engaged learning. Create a facility that fosters discovery and innovation with flexible and transformative environments that encourage interdisciplinary interactions, social experiences, and immersive learning to prepare all students to be lifelong learners. And the third goal that was generated on that day, after collecting all of those ideas, is sustainable actions. Design a smart building, meaning socially responsible, measurable, and artful, that positively impacts the well-being of the students, staff, and the community, reduces the consumption of energy, water, and production of waste. Include features designed under the WELL building standard to create environments that promote the health and well-being of the building occupants. So we're happy to take on this challenge and to bring all of these goals into fruition. And so throughout the whole design of the project, schematic design, which is the phase we're in now, through design development, and then through our construction documents, Jim and our team of architects will be continuing to maintain all of these goals, and Henry will do so on the site. So the first step in any building project is to analyze the information that we've received from you as the client and to deliver it in a quantitative way, analyze, in this case, the ed specs that were developed about a year earlier, and to generate those into defined building areas and adjacencies. So we're in that process now. We're still working on that as Jim is developing the building with our programmers and planners. But one of the ways that we did that is analyzing your ed spec. Another way that we did that is to gather those people who were involved in developing the ed spec at the visioning session. You'll see a photo of that in the upper right. And those on the screen on the left is one example from one of the 5-hour meetings of goals from those stakeholders. We call that heart mapping. And what's most important to people, we ask them to put in the center of the heart. And if they have additional requests that are less important in their view, it's on the outside of the heart. So we have 5 of these boards and collected all of this data. That's where the goals were developed. In the lower right of this, you see a program distribution chart. This is a way for us to track the net square feet in the building and by department. So each color represents a different department within the building. And so we make sure that we track that throughout the entire life of the project to make sure that we are not missing any of the spaces that are needed for all of these students and teachers. And now Henry will talk about the site analysis that we began back in the beginning of January when we started on the project.
Good evening. That's loud. Thank you for coming out. One of the things that we really want to do is make sure we engage you all in understanding what we're thinking and where we're going, and get input from the public on the designs that we're proceeding with. What we're going to be talking about tonight is very preliminary. Still have to work through it with Public Works and the fire marshal and the police chief and our own traffic engineers and other people that will all have an influence of it. But Jim and I are trying to get a sense of what the best placement for a building is on the site, and how we might address the parking and the circulation throughout the site, both vehicular and pedestrian. And we're I've actually sat with Tom or stood with Tom and on my own a couple times to watch the buses come in and out. And, so we're quite aware of some of the uh, issues of traffic circulation, the blocking of Indian Rock, and basically, just the stacking that goes on, the inconvenience of that. And that's one of the things we'll address. There's also just a real concern to make sure that we do provide pedestrian circulation throughout the site. And I think a couple of the ideas we're going to show you tonight address that well. We are able to bring pedestrians through the site with very minimal transition over, vehicular circulatory areas. And then how do we place a building on the site and allow the existing building, the school to function? And Amy and I are working, Amy Kemp and I actually are all working on another project where that's going on as well. So that's, got its own considerations that we'll need to work through, with everybody in construction to make sure that there's safety on the site as the new building is being constructed, and there's a practical sequence so that things, if we do use geothermal, or if we, get into the circulation of the site and you're doing foundations and you're doing earth moving, that it's not a distraction to the students when they're there, and it's all kept safe. So those are all considerations on the site right now. And you're all probably a lot more familiar with some of the site issues than I am even. Again, we've tried to come at times when, the site is being used so we can understand how the kids use the play areas and all that. But, if there's things that you feel that, I haven't addressed tonight, I'd love to hear. One of the questions that I guess came earlier this evening, Kemp clued me in, and was someone was asking about bikes and, other transportation throughout the site. And we will definitely be looking at putting bike racks on the site and having routes for kids to come through the site. The state is also requiring now that electric vehicles be part of the mix of the parking, the general parking, 20%, I believe, Kemp, yeah. And so 20% of the vehicles on the new parking lots will be in fact EV. So that will be a difference from what you have today. And that, when you think about it, makes sense because there's so many people now buying electric vehicles. And it's, we're trying to design a building, as Amy said, that is for the long term. We're doing something that is a really nice, opportunity that doesn't come along very often. So we want to, make sure we make the best of it. I'm going to do what I probably am told you're not supposed to do, but I'm going to turn my back on you a little bit. I'm going to have Jim press the microphone, but I'm going to try to point out a few things on the site plan and go through some of our preliminary thinking. And, hopefully that will help give you some input. You have a better. We needed somebody more intelligent. All right. Thank you very much. All right. So, Amy, if you'd switch maybe to the next site. Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay. So with the existing site, a couple of the issues, we are surrounded. Yeah, thank you. You can pull it all the way over there and I'll just. Again, I'm going to turn my back on you. I apologize, but the site is in the middle of the screen. Why isn't this little red dot showing up? There we go. Oh, it doesn't show up. There we go. Site is in the middle here of this graphic that you're seeing, sort of that outline right there. Existing parent drop pickup area and parking, and then this is the bus loop, and then there's some faculty parking back here, a play area in the back. As you are aware, there's kind of a rock outcropping along the back side of the site here, existing trees and woods, some residential areas, 12 homes immediately north of the site, and then Coach Lamp Lane, and all the homes along Orchard as well. And then along Indian Rock Lane, we have another neighborhood to the south and all those kids walk down as well. And it's our understanding that the neighborhood below this area here is also, even though the roads aren't connected, there's pedestrians that walk through to come to school there. Our understanding is everybody within a mile and a half is really a walker, not picked up by bus. So again, pedestrian circulation becomes very important. And I know from coming to the site various times that the kids, are walking the streets and in great numbers. So we want to make sure that we address that, we keep them safe. Going along Stanwich, again, you have, the golf course along there, and there's a couple larger homes along that side as well. The main fields are to the north of the school. That's where that green area is. It's a little low right now. It is pretty directly accessible to Orchard. There is a line of trees, as you know, that's along Orchard, but there are a couple locations, probably right about where Amy's pointing there, and then further up across sort of from Coach Lamp, where the grade is pretty much almost right at grade. You can just walk right from the fields onto the road. And that includes a softball field, a larger baseball field, a soccer / multi-purpose field, and a little bit of some track stuff, as well as a couple batting cages and things like that. There are also a set of tennis courts down there at the intersection of Indian Rock and Orchard. And part of the ed spec calls for us to add to those, and it may end up being pickleball, and maybe end up being tennis, but we are looking at additional, maybe 2 courts in that, in addition to what is out there today. So that's kind of an overview of the site. And again, most of you probably are familiar with it, and many of you may live even right in those neighborhoods that we're showing. So this is sort of an aerial again of that of the site, and it shows the topography. You can see sort of the grade change that's in here. There's a sort of a high peak over here in Stanwich, and there's an old sort of stone wall around right in this area right there where Amy's pointing with the arrow. And then the hill comes down, and then it's very, very flat, perhaps a little bit too flat in the fields there. One of the issues that we are going to try to address, the school will be in a different location than it is today, but the fields are a little bit wet at times, and one of the goals would be to try to keep them drier so that they're usable throughout the year more. And we also have the intersections kind of highlighted on here. Both the intersection of Indian Rock and Stanwich, which most of the buses seem to come out of here and turn up and go that direction. Only one bus goes back toward Orchard along Indian Rock, but that's, a consideration as to, what happens to that existing curb cut. We have an existing curb cut, as I mentioned, where the other parking lot is, the small parking lot. That one is in consideration, has maybe a little bit better sight distance either direction. And I can't remember the name of the road. What is that road, Amy? Ponderosa, yes. The intersection of Ponderosa. And then we come down to the intersection with Orchard. That intersection is a little bit tough, only in the sense that the sight distances are not wonderful. I've been past there several times, and kids being kids tend to kind of just walk across the road. Last time I was here, there were 2 young women that were tying their shoes in the middle of the road and, just walking across as they were going toward the deli. And, so that's, again, a consideration that we want to take into mind as we're designing our entrances and our projects, so that we make everything a little bit safer and hopefully don't have the cars stacked up all the way around Orchard as they're waiting to pick up their kids. So, and then down there's Coach Lamp. That's good. Amy, you're good. Thank you. And so one of the first shots we did at a draft of some ideas was to utilize the existing curb cut where the parent parking is and faculty parking over here is near Ponderosa, and come in and then bow around very quickly to get out of the way of the fields, what will be the future fields, and provide some parking in here for the tennis courts and all that, which would be more public use during the weekends, but bring down a lane that allows a huge length of stacking along here. Jim and I estimated we probably have at least 60 cars easily for stacking there. You can see that just graphically, this is where they start stacking right now and go around the corner to Orchard. We've probably got 3 times that length. So we believe that that will get rid of almost all the stacking of cars during pickup and drop off. That's along Orchard going out, along Indian Rock going out onto Orchard right now. And then what happens is that we are bringing people down that lane into a bus pull-off on the left-hand side, a loop that comes around and provides for the buses that currently are kind of squished into a very small area on a tight radius. We give them a much nicer, longer parking area along here. And then parents, before they would enter that, this would be a secured entrance. The parents before that would be able to pull off into the general parking and come over, and there'd be a parent pickup area over in this location here. But the nice thing about this design is that from the entrance of the building in this notch, in this particular preliminary design, and the design is morphing even as we speak, but in this design, the entrance is in the corner of the building. And so everybody comes up. There's sidewalks along the roads that bring you in on both sides. There's a sidewalk connection over from Coach Lamp. There's this cross connection in between these 2 parking areas. All the children, whether they're being dropped off by their parents, whether they're being dropped off by the school bus, or whether they're walkers, are all having the same experience of walking up to the entrance in a very similar way. They'd come up together, which we think is kind of important. Nice thing about this is that, again, it allows the building to be constructed while the existing building can still function. Both the bus drop-off area and the existing parking area could be remain intact until the building is in place and we have the parking to replace it. And then we take that building down and a new building would go in. And I think from a pragmatic standpoint, that's one of the considerations we have to take in mind, as well as the overall design. So, and then in the back of the building right here, where we have this little circular area shown, that's conceptually the idea that there would be some outdoor learning space and outdoor dining space. It was expressed to us in some of those meetings that Amy just mentioned, the visioning sessions. People really enjoy the fact that, the school is part of that natural landscape. And we want to engage the kids with some walks through that. I know, and I'm forgetting the name of the property right next door, Pomerantz, that it would be something sort of akin to Pomerantz, where teachers can take kids out, show them, biology, show them how a tree is growing, show them the rock formations, talk about things like that as part of the classes, and also, have the connection over to Pomerantz. And that also allows us an entrance drive off of Stanwich in this particular scheme anyway, for both service to what would be sort of a dock area over here for perhaps a cafeteria entrance, as well as, a lane that would connect all the way around to that outdoor learning area, so that the fire department would have access to the back of the building. Again, that is one of our considerations as we go through site planning. We have to make sure that the fire marshal and everybody is comfortable with that they can provide safe assurances that they can take care of the building in any kind of an emergency. So that was an initial start, and then we had a meeting with the building committee a couple weeks ago, and some of the ideas that came out of that were just minor modifications to it, but I think kind of interesting changes. Again, we're coming in that same entrance right now. Anyway, we've talked about, do we line that up with the other road here, but the site distances may not be great. This one is sort of a known entity and does work. There's no trees that sort of block your view in that area. And we are trying to minimize the number of trees we take down. But we did talk about the idea that perhaps we separate the bus pull in from the parent drop off. So the bus pull in would be on the right, and we're showing it right now coming in off of Orchard. And that would be a controlled gate. It would really be for some faculty parking and the buses only. We've even talked about the idea that since the buses are contracted by the school, they're not just general public, we would make sure that they always came in from the north on Orchard, so they weren't crossing traffic to try to get in when there is heavy traffic. They would just be pulling in and then pulling into the site to the right, so there's no waiting time. And there would be a gate that would open and allow them in. The faculty that would have card readers on their cards could get in as well, but it'd be part of securing the site so that, not everybody could get into that location. So we sort of reversed it, and then the parent drop off would still be that long drive, but it wouldn't be connected to the bus drop off. It would have its own drop off area and just be tied together with the common walk that separates the two. The nice thing about that is that it simplifies the plan a bit and actually allows us a bit more space. You can see 2 more tennis courts ghosted in. And again, whether those become something else or just remain as tennis courts, but it allows us to easily fit another couple of tennis courts into what is a kind of an open field area right now. For the most part, again, where we're showing that entrance drive coming in to Orchard, there's, a few places where there's some openings. It's near the batting cages and all that. We need to take out a lot of trees. The sight distance is fairly decent along there. And again, it would only be for some faculty and for the buses. So, and then we've shown still on this scheme an entrance office stand, which we've talked about in another scheme, perhaps having an entrance kind of opposite Orchard where, maybe we could come into a lower level. Again, that might depend a little bit about what the police chief and the fire marshal need for access to the building. Slightly different field layout, but again, we're trying to replicate having all the various fields that are there today and put them in places where they can go in once the existing building is finally torn down and the new building is occupiable. Lighting would be, low level would be, LED, and we'd have, some security cameras around the site and the normal things we do, but we're sensitive to, the surrounding neighborhood with regard to lighting. We are trying to provide cross connections of the pedestrian walks throughout the site to get you all the way from Indian Hill all the way to Coach Lamp. By walking through the site away from cars, not engaging onto the cars that are driving along Orchard. Jim is going to go into briefly just some conceptually what's going on with the building being tucked into the hill, but we're sensitive to that as well. We don't want this to be a large building. The existing building is a fairly low structure, and you'll see in the sections that relative to the size of the neighboring buildings and homes, that actually we're being respectful to that as well. I think by tucking this building into the grade, it actually creates a very nice setting for the rest of the site. So Jim, do you want to take over and go through that? Jim Hoagland?
Sure. Thanks, Henry. So Henry and I have been working pretty closely together and with the building committee. We've really been pushing some of the site design, but the building design is beginning to run parallel to that. So I'll have a bigger role in the next presentation that we do end of April. Sorry. So when we're in front of you in another month or so, I'll have a much bigger role and I'll be able to speak to the building layout. But right now we're looking at the best location for the building on the site and trying to integrate it with some of the topography that's out there, and trying to assess where service is coming into the cafeteria, where deliveries will be made for general building supplies. And, Henry did a really nice job of explaining how buses entered, parents entered, and the safe paths that all the pedestrians would travel on site. So obviously the site and building design go hand in hand, and they have to work well with each other. And it's a big part of the coordination that we're going to be doing in the coming months. But we are taking an approach where the building is getting pushed as far north on the site as we can get it. We were originally looking at the far north edge of the baseball field. And we began analyzing some of the topography and realized that we could potentially push the building even a little farther into the slope and take advantage of that topography. So the building right now is beginning to configure itself into two parts. And what you're seeing in this section here on the upper right portion of this diagram is a two-story academic wing, kind of located in the middle of the, yep, right where Amy is highlighting, in the middle of that diagram. And that's a two-story classroom wing with access at grade out to the north side of the building, which, as I alluded to, takes advantage of the natural topography. And then the one-story wing that sits in front, we're looking at locating the main entry and the main admin office. That real front door to the school would be located on the south side. Some of the other things that we're beginning to analyze are some sustainability goals, trying to understand how the building gets oriented. We're looking at north-south orientation, classrooms that would take advantage of some of that north light, and beginning to energy model the building. So we have a really good understanding of not only the building envelope when we get to that point, but also how it fits on the site physically and the footprint that it leaves on that site. So the other thing that I wanted to mention was coming out of some of the visioning sessions, there was a strong desire to make that connection to some outdoor learning opportunities. And Henry described some of the paths, and we think that the building location at the far north end really takes advantage of that. And we're starting to develop some schemes where directly off of the north side of the academic wings, the students will have direct access to those outdoor learning opportunities. And there'll be some small trails, probably some areas where classes can gather, as well as a more formal amphitheater, which may be able to be located off the media center as a reading area or a small performance area. So we're really in a mode where we're trying to utilize as much space as effectively as possible on the site. And I think the conversations that we've been having about how the building integrates with the site have been really productive with the building committee thus far. And we're going to keep, continuing to push this a little bit over the next month. And we're excited to present a building to fit in with the site in a month or so.
So hopefully. Okay. So many thanks to Henry and to Jim for helping to share the site design and our progress so far. As you can see on this slide that we have up now, our next steps really are to react to the traffic study once that's completed and to develop building plan options that Jim's mentioning. We already have a stack of them, and we continue to create more as we meet with the committee on a biweekly basis. And develop the exterior character and the building elevations. So these are things that you can expect to see at our next community meeting. And as we develop the building into a more formal building footprint, then Turner will take that and do a conceptual design cost estimate. So that's about where we stand.
Okay.
Just another view of the QR code. I know questions are coming in because I hear a lot of clicking to my right. So we appreciate that, and hopefully we can start to talk about those.
Good evening. My name is Kemp Morehart, architect on the project. So I've been gathering questions on index cards as well as from the Mentimeter. We have, it's up to 31 now. We've had 28 from the Mentimeter and a couple on the index cards. I have organized them into categories of sustainable design, school programming as far as the types of spaces that are in the building, ADA accessibility, some questions about the construction process and how the school will operate, and other assets on the existing school site may or may not be available during construction, building design, site design considerations, and state engagement. So I'm going to start with some of the sustainability ones. Henry already responded to the first one as far as design considerations being made for active transportation, as far as bikes, walking, scooters, etc. And I think you did a good job answering that. Another similar question, request to include walking paths along the side of the school grounds, like the Cos Cob School. Currently, students from Coach Lamp, Jeffrey, and Pine Ridge must walk on the fields to get to the entrance. And I think you responded to that as well. There was a question about, there was quite a few questions about net zero and whether or not the building is going to be considered for a net zero design. We are currently evaluating net zero design, and that is part of our contract for the schematic design phase. So we will be looking to bring this building as close to net zero as possible. There was a question about estimated energy bills. We will be, as part of our process, developing an energy model that will be based on the design of the building and very detailed, inclusive of how much daylight is coming in, how much artificial lights are being used, and the power density for those, as well as the thermal quality of the exterior walls and so forth in the envelope of the building, and estimated costs for operating the building will be part of that process. Correct. Amy said that comes after the selection of mechanical systems for the building, which is all part of that net zero process. Let's see. What measures or equipment are being considered to reduce waste? For example, commercial grade dishwashers, designs for cafeteria sorting stations to divert waste. I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
Sure. We do plan on using reusable trays as a part of the future cafeteria and kitchen management. We will have a dishwasher as a part of the equipment and a tray return area, which is different than what you have today, I think.
Thanks, Amy. There was a question about at what point in the process does the decision to build a sustainable net zero energy school need to be made? I would say that decision point really needs to be made in schematic design as part of this first phase of the project, because the funding for those systems needs to be defined. So that was it for sustainable design items. Well, at least the ones that I've copied and pasted into my document here. There are more coming in. I will maybe we'll take a break and I'll catch up. But school programming, can you speak to the programmatic spaces being created in the new building for special education? Without getting into specifics, I think we can say that the EdSpec has done a tremendous job in identifying special education spaces for these students. And that information is available in the EdSpec.
That's right. The EdSpec I know can be found on the Greenwich Public Schools website, connected with this building committee. The existing building that we're in today has about 2,100 square feet of special ed spaces that we could categorize that way. Some spaces may be doing double duty, but that's from what we could quantify from your existing floor plan. And there's over 4,000 square feet designated by the EdSpec in your new building.
As far as ADA accessibility, there was a question, can we speak to the ADA and code compliance that we'll implement in the building? It's a requirement of the building code that this building and site will be 100% accessible for ADA. So hopefully that answers that question. Construction process. So Tim, you may respond to some of these. How does the team propose to minimize the neighborhood disruption while the construction will be taking place during a 2-year bridge replacement on the post road? I think without diving into the specifics about the bridge replacement, I think, you know, the school site will be separated entirely from the construction site. And if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, when we start looking at the design of the building and keeping all right, when we start looking at the building design and the layout of the design, we're going to also be looking at logistical planning and working with the administration at the school, the community and the neighbors that surround the school to make sure that, you know, we have a safe project site, make sure that we minimize the impacts to the programs here at the school, with the exception, of course, of where the fields will be built in the, where the school will be built in the fields. In response to the work on Post Road, we're going to measure the routes coming off of 95 to be able to bring truck access into the school, into this area. Again, working around the hours for the active school operations that'll be going on.
Okay, and looking into some questions about building design. There was a question about well building standards and if we can explain what well standards are and how they might influence the CMS design. You want to speak to that?
Sure. So well building standards are a series of, I think, 7 categories that talk about the well-being of the inhabitants of the building. Some of those categories include indoor air quality and daylighting, biophilia, exercise. So, you know, sort of planning where stairs are in relation to access throughout the building and keeping people active. And so it's really a way for us to just quantify and measure the quality of the interior space for those inhabitants and especially for the teachers and students who will be in here for 6 or 8 hours a day. And then that is in sort of in conjunction with the LEED building standards, which is also a checklist for us to use in the sustainable design. Even though this project is not designated to become a LEED certified building, the Connecticut state high performance standards require LEED silver equivalent. So we expect that heading toward the net zero goal, that's easily achieved. But all of that will be kept in mind as we calculate it and keep track so that the state review process goes very quickly as well.
All right. There are a few other questions related to the building, but they're somewhat specific, so I will defer those for the formal written Q&A response that we will be preparing after this meeting. Site design issues. Would there be a sidewalk added on Orchard between Coach Lamp and Indian Rock? I'm not sure if
Yeah, I think that's something that we have talked about with the building committee, and actually we did get some input. That would be something that DPW would need to weigh in on. It's off-site technically, so it wouldn't be something that the state would be funding. So, but we did talk about it, and it's an option we have in our design. And I'm sorry it's not up there anymore, but we, you know, that basically we did provide an internal connection between Indian Rock and all the way down to Coach Lamp and the Long Orchard. But, you know, so that serves a couple functions. It serves not only internal circulation and getting the walkers into school, but kind of serves as a sidewalk. But there was a discussion about whether or not we put something along Orchard, and that's still an ongoing discussion with the town.
Still need to catch up. So give me a few minutes. They're coming in fast and furious now. Yep. I will. Hang on. So there's one here about ADA again, about accessibility. I often hear about adding an elevator or a ramp, but isn't ADA a holistic challenge that must be done throughout the structure? And the answer is yes to that, and it will be. Like being on the hot seat.
No pressure.
While Kemp is looking through a few of the questions, with regard to ADA and the site, same response to a degree. The state will be looking for us to make sure we're ADA compliant throughout the entire site. The nice thing about this site is, although there's a huge topographic change, a lot of the way we've laid this out, at least preliminarily, it's a fairly flat site. You come in from Indian Rock and go all the way through. All those walks are going to be very flat, coming all the way into the entrance of the school and adjacencies to the athletic fields. The kids will be able to walk from the school directly from the gym, or directly to the fields. And we are already required to provide ADA access to all the fields for coaches and for students that may be disabled. So, all that will be fairly easy with these current configurations. And so that shouldn't be a site issue either, and we'll have, of course, the required ADA spaces up near the building entrances, and probably spread them out through the site. There'll probably be a couple down by areas like the ball fields again for any parents that, need to get to the kids' games and what have you. So there'll be a mix throughout the site.
So Amy, this is one that you can respond to with regard to sustainable design. Are you considering new technologies for windows, enhanced insulation, photovoltaic arrays, geothermal wells, CO2 sensors, LED lighting, all of the above?
Yeah, so the answer to that is all of the above. LED lighting is standard today, regardless of net zero design. We put that in all of our buildings. Photovoltaics will certainly be explored because on-site energy production is going to be necessary to maintain a net zero building. We will be looking at geothermal wells for the mechanical system, and the thermal qualities of the exterior wall in the windows and in the walls is of the utmost importance. So that's really the first step, is to build a really well insulated, low air infiltration building, because that's the foundation upon which you can really reduce your energy costs. And energy, I don't mean costs by dollars, but by energy use intensity, I guess, is the better terminology for that. So the thermal value of the walls is important, and of the roof. And then going from there, we'll make sure to select all of the most efficient and certainly new technology. Mhm.
Oh, sorry, I'm shunting it. Will we include conduits for further charging stations in the parking lots, given the 75-year design?
So
Extra
I think
conduits for
you're talking about
future
EV.
PV or future EV.
Yeah, that's always a very good idea. We are providing that actually in another site that we're working on currently as well. You know, once you put pavement down, you have to saw cut through it. So it's smart to provide the connections to get a transformer or whatever you need out there to where you're going to have future EV. There are other technical considerations for EV2. Usually, again, the fire marshal requires having separate cutoff switches, AB switches, so that they don't have to fight a fire of a burning vehicle with 220 volts running through it. So those are things we'll be taking into consideration as we go through the design, but they're pretty much standard that we would provide conduits for the, you know, any future, because as you probably know, that's probably where we'll all be driving, probably electric, or 90% of us will in 10 years or whatever it is. Seems to be going that way.
Another question, and Jim, I think you can respond to this one. How do we envision the new CMS as a resource for the community?
Well, I mean, obviously this school is an integral part of the community and this neighborhood. So in the ed specs, it was very, very clear that many of the spaces will be used after hours on the weekends. But first and foremost, they need to work for the school. But in our planning, it's been a recurring theme where the building committee and the educators and administrators are talking about how the auditorium is easily accessed by the public, the cafeteria, the gymnasium. So we've identified a number of spaces as community resources. And as we're advancing the building design, it's going to be very evident that there's a single entry that gets the public in to all of those community related spaces, and the academic spaces can potentially be completely separate, you know, shut off during those after hours events. So the school plan will be very thoughtful and easily to secure and compartmentalize the school. But you know, I think every school realizes that spaces like this that we're in right now are used on a regular basis by the community, and they're a huge community asset. And it's one of the reasons we're sitting taking these questions from you this evening.
And actually, just the site as well, you know, one of the things that we've talked about with the building committee is the fact that I guess my understanding is that the tennis courts are utilized. I mean, they're reservation only, they're booked constantly, and the ball field's the same. We had some discussions with the athletic department. And so, you know, those kind of things, we've provided locations for those fields that are proximate to parking that could be used over the weekend for groups that might use the fields and what have you. They're going to be used constantly as well. And so the layout kind of addresses that, you know, where the parent drop off is that you saw in the plan, and the adjacent parking, all that is easily you know, is adjacent to fields, easily accessible to the field. So those are all considerations, lighting and all that, so that people can find their way in and out of the site, you know, during weekends as well.
So I think we'll probably call it a wrap on that. We're getting, excuse me, a lot more questions here, but they're very specific, and I think we would want to be able to consider them more thoughtfully than what we might do right here. And we will do a full Q&A document that will be posted.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Kemp. What I want to do now is to go back to the slide this up, how you can stay informed. There's several ways to do that. One is you can visit the GPS website, graditschools.org/CMSBC. We publish our minutes of our weekly meetings on the site. The Q&A session this evening with the additional questions that Kemp wasn't able to get to, all of those will be put into a document and answered, and also posted on the CMSBC component of the graditschools.org website. So we would urge you to keep an eye out for that. In addition, you can email us. We have set up a Gmail address. You can see it here on the screen. You will not get, I want to help manage expectations on this. You will not get an immediate reply. It's run by volunteers, but I can promise you we will answer the email if you'll send it in. So there's several ways, again, that you can stay informed. We hope you will. And to conclude the meeting, as I open the meeting, I want to say two things. Once again, to say thank you for taking time out to be a part of this community engagement forum so that we can hear from you. Keep those cards and letters coming. I mean that sincerely, because we do want to hear from you. And then secondly, we'll have another session either in late April or early May, where we will hope to be able to show you proposed building design, front, back, and side elevation, and so forth. So stay tuned, and we'll be returning soon with more information. With that, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you again for attending. Good night.